on our exploratory trip, which I know is part of the expat pattern, just fell in love with this country. I mean, it just seemed like every time you turned a corner, in whether you were in Lisbon or in Porto, wherever you happened to be, you would see some breathtaking spot. There's a great word in Portuguese, and I'm not sure that there's a specific word in English for it, but it's saudade, which is this wistful longing. And oddly, that's the street that we live on. And so it's kind of a reminder every day, but this wistful thinking about what the sense of community may have once been in the United States or elsewhere is really captured here.
On this week's episode, I'm joined by George Polsner. George is originally from the US, but he's been living in Portugal for the last 2 years. George is the founder of Civ.works, a civic social media site, and he's an author who's passionate about innovation and science. We discuss, amongst other things, why he decided to move to Portugal in the first place, his experience of the D7 process, the cleansing moment that he had arriving on Portuguese soil. And George shares about all the things that he enjoys about living in Portugal, from food, the people, the cost of living, healthcare, sustainability and innovation. And George talks about how the American dream became the Portuguese dream. For those of you listening, head over to our YouTube channel to watch some of this episode. And for those of you watching, click down below and subscribe. And for the full podcast episode, go to Google, Stitcher, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now over to my conversation with George. Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of Portugal, The Simple Life. And I'm delighted to be joined here by George Polsner. Am I saying it correctly? Polsner?
Yep. Yes, that is great, Dylan. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We were speaking before we hit record. You haven't gone back to the US for the holidays. You're experiencing a Portuguese Christmas.
I am indeed. Second Portuguese Christmas, and just really enjoy it here.
But George, maybe you can tell us a bit about you.
I'm in my 60s. I've just been here in Portugal with my better half. We arrived here back towards the end of 2021. We'd been vaccinated and boosted, and we were doing a lot of research in the early part of 2021 about where we could potentially reside, that where the economics were good, healthcare was good, the politics were stable, and the weather patterns were good. We really focused our research on Spain and Portugal, and then went on our exploratory trip, which I know is part of the expat pattern, just fell in love with this country. I mean, it just seemed like every time you turned a corner, in whether you were in Lisbon or in Porto, wherever you happened to be, you would see some breathtaking spot. And so that pattern, very childlike. I mean, you see these things as a child and you're just amazed. And then as you grow older, you see the same things over and over. And it's like, yeah, okay. But it was just really stunning here in Portugal to see the various sites and the squares and the miradouros and the beauty of the Tagus River and the Douro River. And so we knew, based on a lot of the research that we had done, the actual adventure and exploration supported. We've got a hope that the Portuguese government is gracious enough to let us reside here for a while. And so we're here.
Amazing. What were some of the things that surprised you pleasantly that you weren't expecting?
In coming here, it was really like a deep Zen cleansing breath. For example, just something as simple as going out to the Avenue de Liberdade in Lisbon and walking from the Saldanha area to Cais de Sodré, and the kiosks along the way in the middle of this beautiful street with great architecture on both sides, tree-lined middle part of the street, the Parque de Eduardo, at how a massive amount of green space in the middle of Lisbon, which I imagine developers might look at that in the United States and go, well, this is great. We could put an IKEA here and housing. And the fact that that's really set aside for the enjoyment of the Portuguese people and all those that reside that can take advantage of it. It just seems to be the other thing that we were struck by is at the time, after we had been vaccinated and boosted and came here, we were still wearing our masks. And at the time, there were major protests in the United States against, just a fundamental, easy thing to do to make sure that you're not going to infect your neighbor or your community. And here, people seem, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, we're gonna wear masks. We're gonna, protect the people around us. There weren't these, massive protests against, and so there just seemed to be such a sense of community that, was something you hope for growing up in the United States that seemed absent over the last, generation or two. That still seems to be very, very embedded in the culture in Portugal. And so I would say that was the biggest surprise.
You mentioned cost of living was a factor in your decision here. I mean, just without getting down into the dollars, everything, I mean, has that made a difference for you from a lifestyle perspective being here in terms of just your daily costs?
I knew the biggest expenses that I was going to have were really housing and healthcare. And I find that the housing costs here, especially in Lisbon, are not vastly different from the United States. If people are thinking, I can come to Portugal and my lease is going to be a tenth of what it is in the United States, that's not practical. Healthcare certainly is. Healthcare is of higher quality, I found here.
Okay.
And certainly the cost is probably, it's remarkably less than what I would pay in the United States, as well as for prescription medication. In terms of food costs, I've been a vegetarian for over 20 years, which is problematic in terms of Portuguese food and culture. I have allergies to seafood and eggs. So
allergies to seafood and eggs?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you've got yeah, you have to be careful where you go.
Yeah, so you're thinking I probably don't need the exercise equipment because I can't eat it in Portugal.
Just about. No, but I mean, you can get by. You spoke about, that American dream, here in Portugal, that they put people first, which again, if you speak to Portuguese people, they'll have their complaints about what's happening politically and these kind of things. But I think in general, as a culture, it's about people. It's about helping. It's like you mentioned, that community. In terms of, for you now living the Portuguese dream, how has your life changed just as a human being? You mentioned that experience of that deep Zen cleanse when you arrived. Now we're 2 years on. How has your life changed in regards to just being an average, normal human being in this place?
But I think that there's more of I think as some of your other guests explain, more of a true work-life balance that you can stop and breathe. I mean, we can take our little train, regional train into Aveiro and just walk around town and eat outdoors and just kind of watch life go by and feel, no sense of time pressure to, we have to be back, we have to get to this meeting, we have to do this thing. And some of that may be just related to not having the rigors of reporting to a CIO at Oracle or at the state of California. But some of that, I think, is just the culture and nature of life here, that you have all of these trappings of being able to stop and enjoy and breathe and, enjoy a tasty adult beverage outside at a kiosk and just people watch. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, it may sound very simple, and it may sound like, you can do that anywhere, but it's just very welcoming to do that here. There's a great word in Portuguese, and I'm not sure that there's a specific word in English for it, but it's saudade, which is this wistful longing. And oddly, that's the street that we live on. And so it's kind of a reminder every day. But this wistful thinking about what the sense of community may have once been in the United States or elsewhere is really captured here. And I think it's really embedded in daily life. You may not see it if you specifically look for it, but after you're here for a while and you do that Zen breath and you kind of relax into it, it washes over you.
Why do you think Portuguese people should be proud of their country?
If you think about life itself, then honoring life over other pursuits is something that I think is very, very wise. I mean, it's something that the indigenous in America, taught to really prioritize elders and life and the land over other pursuits. And I think that it's something that is part of the Portuguese culture. And so I think that coming to that and evolving a culture, which is, I think, where life is central and to money or material things, balancing the needs of society with the needs of individual, as opposed to going too far one way or another. I think these are all very wise things to be proud of. And just the history, I mean, when you walk around and see the amazing architecture and such around, for example, you just have a chance to go to São Jorge Castle and look out across Lisbon, and it's just majestic. I mean, it's beautiful land, great culture. And I think that they've been very, very wise in terms of how they've prioritized their approach to life.
I like that a lot. George, what's one thing that you would like people to remember and take away from our conversation? Just one thing.
People need to have Zen patience when it comes to processes, especially in dealing with bureaucracy in Portugal. I think that there's a tendency to say, and especially as a systems person, oh, there should be a process for this, and it could be automated, and then it can scale, and everybody can be served far more efficiently. You have to forget about that and really think that this is working for the Portuguese people, and it may not be working to the extent in your context, but it's working. I mean, Portuguese society continues on. It's doing quite nicely without American ideas at systems improvement and process improvement. So just be Zen, take a deep breath, enjoy it, have a Super Bock or a Sagres at the kiosk.
Those are the adult beverages you were referring to earlier.
That's right.
George, a question that we ask all of our guests: Portugal, the simple life, why?
Saudade, has to be saudade. The wistful longing for something that in which the community is at the heart.
Beautiful. I've really enjoyed this conversation, George. I hope to meet you in person one of these days instead of behind a screen. But thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I enjoyed our time together. Thank you for having me, Dylan.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I'm going to let you call it.
Okay, well, that's a wrap.
So thank you once again to our guest, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to The Simple Life.